if people weren't paying attention last year in 2020, yes, we had a pandemic. Yes, we had an election, and basically a attempted a subversion of democracy. But the other big crisis that has been a rolling crisis in America has been that of police violence. Okay, police violence has long been a massive issue in the United States. I mean, I remember growing up and hearing Dave Chappelle do bits about police brutality against, for him as a black American, from his perspective, I mean, I remember him doing a joke about, hey, white people didn't believe us about police brutality. And then, Newsweek wrote about it, and it was like, oh, honey, look at this, the police are beating up black people, and there's been this for a long time. I mean, the Rodney King video was obviously a clear public reckoning with that. But now that Americans all throughout the country have basically better quality video cameras in their pockets now than, the VHS tape that was used to film the Rodney King beating. We continue to see these instances of police violence. Also now, as cameras have become more and more economical and smaller, now we have police body cameras. Okay, and those have been used to document two recent very public killings. One was Dante Wright in Minneapolis, literally miles from where the Derek Chauvin case is going on, the killer of George Floyd, where his defense attorneys are trying to argue that, standing on the man's neck with his knee isn't what, for 9 minutes, isn't what killed George Floyd. It was George Floyd's fault for, having whatever trace amounts of fentanyl in his system. As if, standing on a man's neck with your knee for a second was just incidental. It was really this that killed him, right? I mean, we're having a murder case for a murder everybody saw. Blocks away, Dante Wright is pulled over for a expired registration, and apparently they had a problem with having an air freshener in his window or hanging from his rearview mirror, as if that's a huge issue. He called his mother moments before he was shot, supposedly accidentally, by this female police officer. And we're not going to watch the footage here. I'm not going to play footage of people being murdered by police or in any way on this channel. It's not what it's here for. If you really want to see that stuff, it's out there for you. So she was fired, or she might have resigned, but she was also immediately charged with second-degree murder. And she made her first court appearance today. I mean, orange jumpsuit and all. The former Brooklyn Center, Minnesota police officer charged in the killing of Dante Wright made her first appearance in court Thursday as members of the Wright family continue to call for consequences. Sorry, I neglected to mention, yes, this is miles away from the Derek Chauvin case in Brooklyn Center. But the officer claimed to be reaching for her taser when she shot him with a gun. That this was an accident, and that was what the police chief said. This was an accident. She meant to shoot him with, an electrifying gun, a taser, and accidentally, shot him with her gun. That's what they claim. Even though, there's quite a bit of weight difference between the two. But, when you hear the video, she did seem genuinely surprised that she shot him. The Washington County Attorney's Office has charged Potter with second-degree manslaughter. She faces a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. She was arrested Wednesday and released later that day after posting a $100,000 bond. She's being represented by a high-profile Minnesota defense attorney who has represented multiple police officers and former Vikings quarterback Dante Culpepper. One of his current clients is Thomas Lane, a former Minneapolis police officer who helped restrain George Floyd. Jeez, might as well. He's in the area, right? Thursday's court appearance was brief and conducted via Zoom. Meanwhile, in a short a church in North Minneapolis, members of Wright's family and their attorney, Benjamin Crump, held a press conference where they continued to demand consequences for Potter. They also lamented their son's name, joining those of other black men killed by police officers in encounters that began over seemingly minor transgressions, such as Eric Garner selling loose cigarettes and George Floyd using a suspected counterfeit $20 bill. Quote, they got no due process. They didn't get to have the officers come before the court of law and have the witnesses and evidence presented to a jury to make a determination. And this here is the issue. This is the issue with police shootings and police violence. Police officers, through qualified immunity, through multiple, training that I'm going to get to, aspects of their training, they get to act with impunity and basically act as judge, jury, and executioner in the blink of an eye, in a moment's notice. And police officers often claim that this is because of the difficulty of their job, because of they have to make these life or death situations that their lives are on the line. This is part of why officers get off so often, free from murder charges, or don't get prosecuted at all for killing civilians, is because if they just say I feared for my life, then that in many ways legally gives them the justification for shooting people. I mean, there have been a few cases where people were shot in the back, they were running away, and of course this another case happened, and we just got footage released of Adam Toledo's murder. And this is the thing. I got in an argument. This was in Chicago, Adam Toledo. 13-year-old Adam, he was 13 years old. He's a child. 13-year-old Adam Toledo's mom thought her son was missing until cops came knocking 2 days after killing him. 2 days she didn't know where her son was. Quote, Adam had many dreams that he will never get to live out, the boy's mother, Elizabeth Toledo, said. Ironically, one of his dreams was to become a police officer. That's Adam with his mother. They had to wait days after for them to release the footage. Evil Yoda in the comments says, this never ends. You're damn right, this never ends. We've also had another mass shooting yesterday. Not only do we have to worry about mass killings through, mass shootings, people going psycho. The person at the FedEx facility yesterday was a former employee who went and shot his coworkers and then himself. But now we also people in this country have to contend with the police shooting them. The family of a 13-year-old boy killed by Chicago police Monday are calling for justice for their son and want to know why they weren't told he was killed until 2 days after the shooting. At around 2:30 a.m. Monday, a police officer shot and killed 7th grader Adam Toledo in the 2300 block of South Sawyer Avenue. Chicago police have released few details about the incident, saying officers were responding to a shot spotter alert of shots fired when they encountered two people in an alley. What is shot spotter? I need to know. After one person ran away, an armed confrontation took place. An officer shot a person in his chest, police said in a statement. Police did not explain what they meant by armed confrontation, but Toledo was pronounced dead at the scene. So the body camera footage has been released of this. And, look at the way they frame this. This is before the much was known about Adam. Chicago police fatally shoot man in Little Village. A 13-year-old boy is a man, according to when these police officers released this information. And this is the thing, guys, as a journalist, I can tell you, news outlets, whether it's newspapers or TV news, we journalists are trained to take law enforcement at their word every time. It's part of an issue in our industry that needs to be contended with, that we will eat up whatever the police say, and the police said, blah, 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 blah. Even though it's now been proven how dishonest police agencies, individual officers, leadership can be, especially in these situations when it comes to officer-involved shootings. Okay, they can be. They lie. I mean, they have law enforcement has lied. It's not all cops are liars, and all that stuff. I mean, but people lie to protect themselves, and agencies cover up information and lie to protect themselves. It's only because of laws that have established body cameras on police officers and transparency, public information laws that make it so that the footage, I'm not going to play it, but the footage of Adam Toledo's shooting, his murder, I mean, the kid is holding up both his hands, clearly show there's nothing in his hands. And he was shot in the chest and died. And the police have claimed there was a gun on the scene, that he tossed a gun away, and they're probably they're arguing. I can't remember if the officer has been fired. This is all happening so fast, obviously, and I didn't have the time. I was reporting today. I didn't have the time to read this, but look at this. Troubling police pattern. Latino community reels after Adam Toledo's death. Police officers are supposed to serve the people, and they've been killing our youngest, a community activist said. We must completely reevaluate what does policing look like. One of the nation's, this is in NBC News, one of the nation's most recognizable Latino neighborhoods is grieving the death of Adam Toledo, 13, after a video showing him being fatally shot by a police officer was made public. Residents of Little Village, a predominantly Mexican-American Latino neighborhood in Chicago, have been placing flowers and candles near South Sawyer Avenue, where Adam was killed, mourning a life that ended too soon. Quote, the police officer took away opportunity from Adam Toledo, opportunity to make a difference, opportunity to live a life, and opportunity to grow into a well-civil young man in our society. Jesse Fuentes of the Illinois Latino Agenda and Advocacy Group told NBC News he was robbed of a full life, and there's nothing that Adam Toledo could have done that night that would have justified his murder. Adam was killed March 29th. Freeze, stop, right effing now. Hey, show me your effing hands. Drop it, the officer, who had been identified as Eric Stillman, said. Eric Stillman. Body camera footage made public by the Civilian Office of Police Accountability shows Adam being shot in the chest immediately after he put both of his hands up. Stillman's attorney, Timothy M. Gray, said in a statement that the officer had no choice because he, quote, had no place to take cover or concealment. The gun was being oriented in his direction and he was left with no option. Based on the video from the shooting officer, it was not clear if Toledo was holding a gun when he was being chased down the alley. Police later released an edited timeline video that showed a firearm lying on the ground at the scene of the shooting. It also featured freeze frames of the firing officer's body camera video that police say shows Toledo was holding a gun immediately before he was shot. Footage from a nearby surveillance camera that captured the shooting appears to show Adam toss something with his right hand behind a wooden fence before facing the approaching officer, who quickly fired his weapon. While there's all this debate about what happened leading up to the shooting, there's no doubt that, quote, the child had his hands up, he was surrendering, and the police shot him anyway. Nicole Gonzalez Van Cleve, a sociology associate professor at Brown University, told NBC News. So, compliance doesn't seem to save you, not even a child. So, obviously, there's this aspect to the story. Police are claiming there was a gun. Video, and this has happened around a lot of these incidents where you can point to this, you can point to that. Dante Wright, was he resisting arrest, right? Was he getting into his car? And do these people, I had somebody reach out to me on social media who claims to be liberal left and was upset that I was sharing information that he thought was misleading, because he doesn't believe that there's racial that there's a racial issue here, and that the media is creating this narrative that this has to do with race, and they're ignoring all the white people who get killed by police. I think it's very clear to many people, including the activists, and I've listened to police abolitionists. I've listened to people who advocate for defunding. I've listened to people, just full-blown anarchists, ACAB type people, all cops are bad type, people in that activist realm who they make clear that not only, do the police obviously have a well documented racial bias and disproportionately kill people of color based on their population, but that they're also acting in the interests of the state, which acts in the interests of the capital class. And so law enforcement very clearly target poor people and people in poverty. Obviously, crime is higher in poverty-stricken neighborhoods because people are desperate, but there's also just all kinds of issues like predictive policing, where they're using computer algorithms to compute this is where the crimes are going to be, right? Because this is where the poor people are at. This is where the people of color are at. They're inputting, data into these computers that already exists in a racist context of policing. People want to claim, Trev Flat 5 here is saying poor white people get killed by the police. Absolutely. I mean, this person was arguing with me trying to say this doesn't ever get reported on, which is absolute nonsense. There have been multiple cases that get reported on of white people being shot by police, but guess what? It tends to look like this. Autistic teenager in Utah shot by police after mother calls for help. This is what tends to happen. And all kinds of white people get killed by police, unarmed, armed. But in this case, people having mental crises or, a mental crisis. This woman called because her son was having an episode. She needed help. He had separation anxiety, and they killed her son. One of these similar cases, the police officer specifically said, "I don't have time for this," before he shot somebody. This is a problem. This is a long-standing problem. If people, the police do target poor people. But the idea that people of color, and white people are shot by the police as well. Police brutality is an issue that everybody deals with. But the idea that people of color don't suffer it in a disproportionate way is ludicrous. If you're trying to argue that, you've missed the point. You're trying to, this guy was trying to share with me all these stats he apparently had saved on his phone. You're looking at skewed data. Or you're trying to read into the data what you want, okay? Because look here. Minnesota man accused of dragging, assaulting police officer in mass dispute. The officer responded to a call for help at a Maynard's where the suspect allegedly attacked an employee with a piece of lumber following a mass dispute. This is a guy attacking people at a hardware store. A 61-year-old Minnesotan man, because he wasn't wearing his mask. Gee, wonder why. This guy, so let's see. As Officer Steve Sickman approached, he has a weird name. Oeltjenbruns, sounds like some kind of Norwegian name. Tried to evade him in a slow-speed car chase that ended near a local mall. When Sickman exited his vehicle to confront Oeltjenbruns, he became trapped in the driver's side window of Oeltjenbruns' car. Oeltjenbruns then took off, dragging Sickman down the road at a high speed. The officer was also struck with a hammer in the struggle. If you don't believe it, guys, it was caught on camera. Look at this. I'm going to turn the volume down a bit because it's very loud. But look at this. That's the cop in the window on this guy's truck. Watch.
Oh, hell no.
The cop is on there.
Oh.
You see that?
Oh my God.
Oh, hell
Again.
no.
The cop is on there.
Guys, they arrested this dude. They arrested him. He's not dead. I'm like, hello? There's a problem here. There's a problem here with police brutality, but there is racial animus among police. Like if you don't understand that, I'm sorry. I mean, the FBI has literally done reports on white supremacists are infiltrating police departments. Nothing's been done about that. Nobody's cleaning up shop. There's racial animus, but there's also the way that police approach shootings has changed over the years. The police obviously have militarized over time. Let's see. Bo in the comments says the response was very different to the January 6th, Capitol attack than to any Black Lives Matter rally. Yeah, right. But also that the way that law enforcement has approached specifically shootings and use of lethal force, guys, there's been some troubling stuff. This is a story from 2013. Is your local this is in Reason. Is your local police department using pictures of pregnant women and children for target practice? For real, guys, for real. Original post. What if I told you police in your town could desensitize themselves to the idea of shooting an armed child, pregnant woman, or young mother for just a couple bucks? The, quote, No More Hesitation series from Law Enforcement Targets Incorporated offers exactly that. For less than 99 cents per target, police can shoot at real-life images, quote, designed to give officers the experience of dealing with deadly force shooting scenarios with subjects that are not the norm during training. This here, I need to save this image just to bring it up full size for y'all. This is insane. Just brace yourself. This was from their website where they were selling this target. No More Hesitation. Little boy with real gun. Okay. Product description. Non-traditional threat depicting a very young boy. Hold on a sec. Gosh darn it. I'm trying to make it so this is big so you guys can see it clearly. I mean, obviously that's a little boy. He's holding a gun in his hands in the picture. Non-traditional threat depicting a very young boy holding a real gun, designated to prepare officers for the worst possible situation. Background is faded, further highlighting the threat. Color realistic target. Okay. So the company responded to this story at the time. They discontinued the line of targets featuring mom, child, grandparents, pregnant women. Right. I mean, they released a statement to Reason. Guys, this is, just brace yourselves for what you're about to hear. The subjects in NMH targets were chosen in order to give officers the experience of dealing with deadly force shooting scenarios with subjects that are not the norm during training. I found while speaking with, this is a statement from this company. I found while speaking with officers and trainers in the law enforcement community that there is a hesitation on the part of cops when deadly force is required on subjects with atypical age, frailty, or condition. In brackets, this is insane. One officer explaining that he enlarged photos of his own kids to use as targets so that he would not be caught off guard with such a drastically new experience while on duty. Cops thought it was prescient for them to prepare for shooting children. They requested this company make these targets. And that cop in particular was shooting at targets of his own children. Where would they get an idea like this? Well, for years, this guy named Dave Grossman has been training police officers. I recommend you check out this story in Mother Jones. Are you prepared to kill somebody? A day with one of America's most popular police trainers. The dark vision of killology expert Dave Grossman. He literally has training classes called Killology. Marching around the stage and theater in Lakeport, California, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman tells his audience that they shouldn't go out looking for people to kill because those who need killing, the quote, gangbangers, terrorists, and mass murderers will come to them. All they need to do is be ready. Are you prepared to kill somebody? He asked me and the small group of, quote, armed citizens who've paid $90 or more to see him. If you cannot answer that question, you should not be carrying a gun. 2 hours into his high-octane, 6-hour seminar, the self-described top police trainer in the nation is just getting warmed up. Grossman, a 60-year-old former Army Ranger, wears low-slung blue jeans, an ornate Western buckle belt, and a black button-up emblazoned with the words Grossman Academy. The O stitched with a bullseye. We fight violence. What do we fight it with? Superior violence, righteous violence. Like a preacher, he doesn't bother with notes. So guys, part of this dude's training of police officers includes showing them footage of officers being shot on the line of duty, often like by people who just immediately whip out a gun and shoot them. So this is part of where he wrote a book called On Killing. Okay. So this is part of where this attitude among law enforcement comes from, that they need to prepare so heavily for the possibility of shootings that they're going to put up pictures of their own kids or request a target shooting company, to provide to manufacture targets of children holding guns. Has anybody else noticed like the troubling trend of police officers sporting the symbol from the Punisher, right? The Punisher is a Marvel character, a vigilante who kills people, a vigilante cop who kills people. They have the thin blue line Punisher, right? Like that's the whole thing about the Punisher, is he kills people. He's a vigilante who kills people that the system just won't take care of, right? I mean, the Punisher also has like a whole backstory where, his family's murdered and all that. But how many of these cops really have that? They're not going to like kill mobsters. They're just identifying with a vigilante killer. I mean, I've also talked about police departments that we had one here in California in the Central Valley area that they were a sheriff's office that were bending the tips of their stars every time they shot somebody, every time they killed someone or shot someone. It was like a badge of courage. They bend an end of their star every time they made a killing. So this is a cultural problem. And I'm sorry, but everybody who wants to argue, everybody like, I don't know, whoever this person is, Ariella Scarcella, I don't care who she is. If you know who she is, I'm sorry. Stop buying into the media's race wars. Go outside and you'll see everyone is just chilling. If you want to just ignore the violence that people face, this guy, Jason C., the same voices who say Adam Toledo shouldn't have ran will tell you Kyle Rittenhouse was just defending himself. And on the topic of Kyle Rittenhouse, if you don't think there's a problem in law enforcement killing people of color, oh, look. New leaks show U.S. police and public officials donated to Kyle Rittenhouse. Data breach reveals. Officers and officials also donated to fundraisers for far-right activists and fellow officers accused of shooting black Americans. Well, you don't say. Why does the media make everything about race? A data breach at a Christian crowdfunding website has revealed that serving police officers and public officials have donated money to fundraisers for accused vigilante murderers, far-right activists, and fellow officers accused of shooting black Americans. In many of these cases, the donations were attached to their official email addresses, raising questions about the use of public resources in supporting such campaigns. Got to give it up to them, being obvious about it. The breach, shared with journalists, Transparency Group distributed denial of secrets, revealed the details of some donors who had previously attempted to conceal their identities using GiveSendGo's anonymity feature, but whose identifying details the website preserved. This is like Parler, like, hey, give us your social security number and all this stuff. Parler, their data is now being used to try a bunch of the Capitol insurrectionists. The beneficiaries of donations from public officials include Kyle Rittenhouse, who stands accused of murdering 2 left-wing protesters in Kennesaw, Wisconsin last August. Rittenhouse traveled from a neighborhood in Illinois, by his own account, to offer armed protection to businesses and then, shot people, killed them. Rittenhouse, who became a cause célèbre across conservative media throughout late 2020, was even supported by the President Donald Trump, held a fundraiser on GiveSendGo billed as a contribution to his legal defense. According to the data from the site, he raised, more than $500,000, like $500,000. Jesus. It's gnarly, guys. So if anybody wants to come at me and say there's not a problem and there's nothing racial going on here, you're wrong. How about that? You're just wrong. And that's it. That's the thing. You know the thing. And Joe Biden, after footage came out recently, of this Chicago police officer murdering Adam Toledo with his hands in the air, Joe Biden said, everybody can protest, but no looting. That's all they care about. That's the first thing they have to talk about is looting. It's ridiculous. And I'm sorry, but Joe Biden shouldn't be surprised. Democratic politicians shouldn't be surprised when people do show up out in the streets. The protests have been going on for nights now in Minneapolis and, in Chicago. It's going to be just as insane tonight, I'm sure. I mean, the Chicago mayor gave some pretty lackluster statements. Oh, wow. Here's the protesters out tonight, y'all. Check it out. Jeez. Holding hands, children, singing songs. Let's see. Here's some of what Lori Lightfoot said.
Broadcast widely of their child's last moments. Much less be placed in a terrible situation of losing their child in the first place. Even as our understanding of this incident continues to evolve, this remains a complicated and nuanced story. And we all must proceed with deep empathy and calm.
Yeah, everyone remain calm. The police have and continue to murder your children and and many people, and will continue to do so. Please remain calm. It's very nuanced.
We live in a city that is traumatized by a long history of police violence and misconduct. So while we don't have enough information to be the judge and jury of this particular situation, it is certainly understandable why so many of our residents are feeling an all too familiar surge of outrage and pain. And it's even clearer that trust between our communities and law enforcement is far from healed and remains badly broken. This lack of trust makes it even more difficult for many of us to wait and hear all the facts before making up our mind in tragedies about this. But again, I urge each resident who cares and loves the city, let's wait.
So, yeah, that is pretty just ridiculous. Like, this is not an issue that came out of nowhere. This is a long time ongoing issue. I have some people commenting. I want to mention Jay Coleman, the Democrats bowing down to the cops too. Let's see. We have some interesting comments here. J. Andrew World says, businesses are more important than human life. Joe Biden. Thomas R. Wait, is no looting a controversial take? I won't say, it's clearly tone deaf. When that's the thing, that if that's the first thing out of your mouth is everybody remain calm and don't freak out and loot and destroy things. How many human lives have to be lost? I'm sorry, but I will make a moral, this is my opinion. I do think human lives are more precious than property. Okay? I know you can buy life insurance, but you can't replace a human being. Okay? I got into it on Twitter the other night because people were freaking out that a Dollar Tree was trending on Twitter because apparently one got set on fire in Minneapolis after the Dante Wright shooting. And I'm sorry, but Dollar Tree, really? We're freaking out about a Dollar Tree. Here's a map. Here's a map of all the Dollar Trees in Minneapolis. I mean, there's more in the greater Minneapolis area. Here's Brooklyn Center. Whoops. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to... Here we go. This is just Brooklyn Center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You go to the greater Minneapolis area. Look how many goddamn Dollar Trees they have. Am I supposed to be more upset about one of these corporate buildings getting burnt than I am Dante Wright being shot, or Adam Toledo being shot in the chest, and his family not knowing what happened to him for days because the police just didn't say anything? This is what, I mean, what, you know what Dollar Tree represents to me? Why do we have so many corporate-owned dollar stores? Why don't we have locally owned mini markets? Why do so many people have a demand for dollar everything? Like, you ever bought like a utensil or a spatula at a Dollar Tree? I've been that broke. My wife and I have struggled, and we have, there was a time where we would go to Dollar Tree for lots of stuff, including groceries. And, I'm sorry, but, people were getting mad at me, like, what about the people who work there? They could be working for a locally owned business. They could be buying products at maybe a little more than $1 that were actually made in the United States. But we've had, deindustrialization in the United States lined up very clearly with deregulation under Reagan, and think of these areas like Flint, Michigan, and areas of the Midwest that used to be very prosperous because of jobs that went overseas. Not because the evil Democrats want to control you or whatever, close your businesses. No, because of deregulation, neoliberalization, which really Reagan completely typified, but that Democrats like Bill Clinton also, they are to blame as well. Both parties are to blame for this. But the deregulation and the trade deals that led to, massive outsourcing of jobs to Mexico, to China, to Taiwan, Indonesia, all these countries where wealthy corporations can, have products made for them. Walmart on the super cheap, right? Insanely cheap. And I mean, Walmart specifically is torn through, America and ripped up Main Street America. Doesn't matter where you are. If you had a locally owned hardware store, all other kinds of things, those disappeared because of stores like Walmart, stores like Dollar Tree, cheap products made overseas by penny labor, sold to people in the United States. Too poor because, none of those jobs are here. All those good-paying manufacturing jobs that help support an economy and local businesses, gone. Public infrastructure crumbling. Guys, we're seeing this is connected to everything. What's one of the few public institutions that actually gets funding? Police. The police. They have guns, they have tanks, they have gadgets, they have body armor, they have, tasers, they have all of these toys to, control the populace. When poor people get out of line, they're there, they're watching you, they're gonna use facial recognition software, they're gonna use cameras to look at your to look at your license plate if you went through a stoplight. We have police in my area of the Central Coast hassling homeless people, unhoused people stricken with mental illness who have no support from the state, barely any food support, barely no mental health support. And they're, getting fined for what? For sleeping in tents because they don't have anywhere else to sleep. I could just rant on this all night. It's deeply disturbing. J. Andrew World, Dollar Tree is theft. Thomas R., how does looting help the cause? It's not the cause, man. It's a symptom. Looting is a symptom. It's not a tactic. This is not something that like activists are doing. People who feel desperate to loot, they take advantage of protests. I was here in Santa Maria. I covered my own city's Black Lives Matter rally, which included unrest, hours and hours and hours, and half of a day, 8 hours after the actual protest. People just in the street milling around. Somebody set a little bonfire in the middle of the street. It was actually kind of, there were all just people circled around just watching. Like it was just like a spectacle. Tons of people setting off fireworks, doing wheelies. Then right at the end of the night, as the police started coming in to clear it out, people broke the windows at the mall and made away with a few shirts and pants. That was not the movement. It wasn't the movement, not for a second. It was people taking advantage of it. These were not the same people who were there early in the day. I watched it. I was there. You can go into my my channel and see some of the live reporting I did. Looting is not the movement. The right wing will tell you that every city was looted and burned down last summer because of Black Lives Matter. Majority of protests have been peaceful, largely peaceful. These protests often, in Arroyo Grande to the north of me, there were right-wingers literally on rooftops with AR-15 guns during these protests, during the middle of the day, to protect their property, terrorizing the community. This is in California, right? We don't have open carry in California. But of course, arch conservative District Attorney Dan Dow said, well, they were on private property, their property, they had the right to hold their guns, and da-da-da. Even though they're standing on the tops of buildings with guns. Like this is some RoboCop Mad Max shit, okay? The right will try to characterize this everything as looting. Bullshit. I'm sorry. Looting has happened around these things. It's because the police are too busy, trying to break up protesters. We've seen kettling. We've seen, tear gas. They were using poison gas, federal troops in Oregon and Portland. We've seen journalists and children have their eyes shot out by beanbag rounds. I'm sorry. This problem, I've put out videos about this before where I'm trying to be well-reasoned. Before I started doing my show live, and I was just talking to a camera, sitting right here, just talking to a camera, and trying to be more explanative. We should all be outraged by this. We should be outraged by mass shootings. That we should be outraged by police killings. You can be outraged by lootings if you want. I reserve my real ire for the snuffing out of human life, and battering people with clubs and shooting them, with rubber bullets that pop their eyeballs. Okay, talking they were aiming at journalists. Not only are they shooting children and shooting people for during traffic stops, during these protests against their brutality, cops were, they were, driving into people with their cars. They were, shooting they were pepper spraying children. They shot at journalists. They were specifically aiming for journalists. A friend of mine in Oregon had a settlement with, can't remember if it was Salem or where, but they shot him point blank as he was identifying himself as press with crowd dispersal rounds or whatever they call it, whatever creepy euphemism. I'm sorry. I'm done being Mr. Calm and rational about this. This is a huge problem in our society that we allow this to happen. And we keep trying different things to deal with it, and they're not helping. They're not helping. Thomas, if you want the cause to be righteous and be perceived as righteous, wouldn't looting be exceptionally counter to that idea? Again, I think I already addressed that. Thomas R., and they can justify asking for that shit because people loot. I'm sorry, but, you know, like, looting is something that happens during times of unrest. It's happened during multiple riots. You know, it's happened during natural disasters. If you want to just like completely line it up to the protests, it's happening because of the protests and because of the movement. I mean, I think you're carrying water for the right. I was here in the gun store in my town where there were no more guns after, like, the guns were cleared out after George Floyd. I sat in there listening to these guys talk. I heard one guy say, "Oh, if they're coming for my food, I'll be ready for them." Like anybody was going to come into his suburb and take his food. Okay? I heard a local sheriff's deputy, local to my area, talk about, "Oh, you know those metal barriers, you know, they look like they set them up to they kind of look, they have like bars on them." I heard him, a local sheriff's deputy, joking about tying that to the hood of a car and using it as like a plow for human beings, to pummel through human beings with a police cruiser with a barrier tied to it. I heard that. Okay, this is what we're dealing with, right? I mean, Jay Coleman says in the comment, looting isn't worse than murder, is how. Exactly. J. Andrew World, Sam Harris defended I thought it was a taser woman on his podcast. Surprise, surprise. All of a sudden we can't lie about, all of a sudden we can't excuse murder because of tasers. Thomas R., I fail to see how that matters. What matters? Trev Flat 5, UC cops broke the windows. Oh yeah. There were videos of cops shattering windows themselves. I mean, sorry guys. The law enforcement is made up of individual people. They have biases, they have conflicts, and they're not perfect. You know, all of this onus is always put on the victims of these crimes and the protesters. And why did anybody loot at any time, during or after? I mean, keep in mind, there have been multiple documented incidents since, last summer, since George Floyd, of hardcore right-wingers trying to disrupt these events. The first glass broken in Minneapolis at the AutoZone. Umbrella Man, the guy with the black umbrella, bashing windows with a hammer, was a white supremacist extremist. Police arrested him and confirmed that. They tracked him down and confirmed that. In the Bay Area of California last summer, during a protest, a few miles away, federal officers were shot at. They were like guards for I believe federal courthouses in Oakland. One was killed, and the right-wing media went, "Look at what they're doing! Look at what they're doing!" Days later, they were shot from a moving van. Days later, that van was found in the hills of Santa Cruz. And it was the sheriff's department was called. There was a shootout with whoever was in the van, and he killed a sheriff's deputy, shot another. They captured and arrested this man. His name's Stephen Carrillo. He's an Air Force, was currently serving, Air Force veteran. Boogaloo boy, far right extremist Boogaloo boy. In Las Vegas, far right guys were arrested for plotting to bomb and set fires and mass shoot one of these events. So not only do we have right-wing skullduggery and fuckery going on with these things, we have police lying about some of the conditions. One was a claim that a Rolex store was robbed of $1 million worth of Rolexes, and Rolex put out a statement that we didn't have a single watch in that store. You think we don't follow the news, right? I mean, bro, yeah, you're being fed propaganda if you think BLM is violent. Come on, Thomas. Thomas, I wish I could agree with you. Lately, I've been seeing how eager some police abolitionists are to jump to burning, looting, and just straight up assault. Name one. J. Andrew World, the conservatives mad about BLM protests are the same ones mad that the last BLM movement, the Union Army, burned down Atlanta. Yeah, and keep in mind that like the that Black liberation movement in the '60s, the Black Panthers and other groups were surveilled heavily by law enforcement, and they were assassinated. They were straight up assassinated by law enforcement. Talk about no-knock warrant coming in and just come in shooting. Bombing. They bombed people in Chicago. That's what happened in Chicago. Okay? Black radical activists were assassinated in Chicago. Thomas, in my local super leftist chat, people are advocating for burning. Not in my channel. I don't advocate for the burning of government property. Yeah, because that's the thing. You could point to the precinct was burned down in Minneapolis. Yeah, that happened. Thomas R., I don't follow conservative media. Bo, when MLK was protesting, they said he was a thug and they hated him. Thomas, I'm seeing my comrades advocate these things. Well, I don't advocate for the destruction of government property. I don't advocate for the destruction of public property, or private property, whatever. But I understand why people would do that if they are setting fires. Keep in mind, some of these fires have been set by people trying to make the whole thing look bad. There was a great report in the Minneapolis Public Radio. I mean, I covered this at the time, that there were people who, there were attempted fires set like miles away from protests in Minneapolis. Minneapolis is a big metropolitan area. And, these people in these communities were like, these are not people from around here. These are outsiders. These are agitators, right? And, there were far-right people on message boards seeking to do this, to start the race war. That's what the Boogaloo movement is all about, right? Second Civil War. And, yeah, some people on the left might advocate for throwing a Molotov cocktail. I don't condone that. But at the same time, I understand where this comes from. How much state violence do people have to endure? Right? That's it. Evil Yoda, total infiltration. Thomas, that's why I love your channel. Yeah, I don't support that stuff. But I'm saying literally, Black Lives Matter is a nationwide, now worldwide movement. Millions of people on the streets. It might be the largest street movement in world history, or at least American history. The movement in India around the farmers there, it might be the largest by the numbers. But in America, this is the largest street movement, civil rights movement. There have been these protests all over the United States. If you listen to the right, the whole country was on fire. There was looting everywhere. But there are multiple stories of right-wingers turning out with guns on street corners because they were told Antifa's coming, Facebook groups, because local media has been so degraded by evil, platforms like Facebook. Now there's all these Facebook groups, and now they're spreading this bullshit about Antifa. Busloads of Antifa are coming. I literally saw it here locally. Right-wingers showing up with guns to the Black Lives Matter rally, which is a bunch of kids going out to their first protest. I had a music student, one of my piano students, went out to his first protest in Arroyo Grande, and there were dudes on the roofs with guns because Antifa's coming. Okay? This is what we're dealing with here. Bo, I don't think BLM is violent. Thomas R., not BLM, just people in my left circles. Man, come on. You got to differentiate for people who are frustrated and venting frustration to people who are actually going out and committing violence. Who actually does that? Who actually goes out and commits the most violence? Does anybody know? Oh, look at this. The rise of domestic extremism in America. Washington Post. Data shows a surge in homegrown incidents not seen in a quarter century. So they're talking about the 60s. Guys, if you think now is crazy, we ain't got shit on the 60s. Like I said, there were bombings, assassinations. It was insane. Domestic terrorism incidents have soared to new heights. Whoop, what happened? Oh, okay, I see. Domestic terrorism incidents have soared to new heights in the United States, driven chiefly by white supremacist, anti-Muslim, and anti-government extremists on the far right, according to a Washington Post analysis of data compiled by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. I get like if you are concerned about the left voicing these issues. My experience with left-wing street movements is the anti-war movement. That's where I came up. I have a tattoo of a peace sign. I'm a pacifist, okay? Most of the lefties I know are. Thomas R. And how shit posting becomes effort posting. Go back to my interview with Shane Patrick. We talk about that. That language you're using comes from far-right message boards like 4chan. It comes from incel killers. It comes, from guys celebrating Elliot Rodgers. I mean, I know we were discussing this in that interview. The surge reflects a growing threat from homegrown terrorism not seen in a quarter century, with right-wing extremist attacks and plots greatly eclipsing those from the far left and causing more deaths, the analysis shows. The number of all domestic terrorism incidents in the data peaked in 2020. Didn't peak, it peaked in 2020, but didn't peak, it wasn't left-wing people, fostering that peak. Yes, there was some looting. Is that terrorism? Is desperate people? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Our incompetent government is giving us pittance of aid, Democrats and Republicans, and we're going to blame Black Lives Matter or protest for people stealing property to. In like a time where unemployment is at record highs, poverty is at record highs. Since 2015, right-wing extremists have been involved in 267 plots or attacks and 91 fatalities, the data shows. At the same time, attacks and plots ascribed to far-left views accounted for 66 incidents, leading to 19 deaths. Okay? What was there? There was the kind of deranged Bernie Sanders supporter who shot at the Republican senator. I think he killed some, he killed some Secret Service. That was a tragedy. There was the guy who shot, the guy in Oregon who shot the Patriot Prayer member. Trump dispatched law enforcement to that guy's house. They turned him into Swiss cheese on his front driveway. Trump called it retribution. We need a retribution. Is there anything like that on the left? Is Joe Biden going, hey, I need to send out the U.S. Marshals to kill Kyle Rittenhouse. We need payback because Black Lives Matter. Be real. Be real. I mean, okay, I'm going to read some more of these comments. Bo, yeah, I would never loot, LOL. My ass would be in a cold cell so quick. I've been to jail a few times. You're treated like an animal. Thomas, I know. I'm referencing that interview. James Ruled, what is the far left? Trev Flat 5, FBI just gives Michael Brooks a drug causing a clot. Oh, that's fucked up, man. That's not funny. Thomas R, probably tankies. Probably. I mean, you're just kind of guessing here. Trev Flat 5, done like dinner. Bo, LOL, exactly. J. Andrew World. Thomas R, let's make this zero. What, the left wing incidents? Bro, we live in a society of hundreds of millions of people. There are, we live in a dystopian hellscape. Our government has been, the parts of our government that actually mattered to people and helped them in their lives have been so eroded by neoliberal capitalism. All we get is Social Security and Medicare. If you're lucky to make it to 65 years old, then you're going to get some regular aid from our government. Okay? Thomas R. We can do it. A better world is possible. No, I agree. I think a better world is possible. I'm not going to blame, I'm not going to blame people in poverty for their conditions. That's not who I am. I'm not like, hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps as the society continues to kick poor people in the teeth. The interest rates at paycheck, cashing places, the rate of just, all the regressive taxation, right? In California, we have, the registration costs for vehicles is through the roof. That's a regressive tax. Not gonna tax the rich, right? Quote from this the Washington Post story: "What is the most concerning is that the number of domestic terror plots and attacks are at the highest level they've been in decades," said Seth Jones, director of the Project CSIS, nonpartisan Washington-based nonprofit specialized in national security issues. "It's important for Americans to understand the gravity of the threat before it gets worse. More than a quarter of right-wing incidents and just under half of the deaths in those incidents were caused by people who showed support for white supremacy or claimed to belong to groups espousing the ideology," the analysis shows. Victims of all incidents in recent years represent a broad cross-section of American society, including blacks, Jews, immigrants, LGBTQ individuals, Asians, and other people of color who've been attacked by right-wing extremists wielding vehicles, guns, knives, and fists. Dozens of religious institutions, including mosques, synagogues, and black churches, as well as abortion clinics and government buildings, have been threatened, burned, bombed, hit with gunfire over the past 6 years. Kenneth Robinson, pastor of Briar Creek Road Baptist Church in Charlotte, one of several predominantly black churches attacked in the spring and summer of 2015, and said some members remain apprehensive. "Trauma is a way of life for us," Robinson said, "so we grieve, but we keep pushing forward." And this is why a class analysis only, class reductionism, that doesn't address white supremacy in the United States is incomplete. Right? We don't need to be, Joe Biden liberal race reductionist where we say, look, I got progressive, the most progressive cabinet ever. Look at I have an indigenous person, I have black people, women. Right? Joe Biden appointed a black Secretary of Defense. The guy has also worked for Raytheon. And is a former military. He's not even a civilian. So like militarization, right? I haven't even we're still just talking about domestic issues. I haven't even gotten to the fact that Biden is inflating the Pentagon budget, the military budget, the defense budget. It's not, we're going to pull out of Afghanistan, but this year, but he still has a massive bloated military budget, right? We have to address the class-based systemic issues, the material issues in this country. But we also have to recognize how deeply seated white supremacy is in our culture, in our society. You can be a totally reactionary, this is all identity politics. That's part of what I think that guy who reached out to me on Instagram was upset about, that, this feels like identity politics. What about the white people who get shot by police? What about them? We just literally had a nationwide protest last weekend that was White Lives Matter. There were literally white supremacists out in the streets of America. They didn't just go away and creep into caves or whatever after Trump, has ducked out of the public eye. These are huge problems. The white supremacy issue is a part of the law enforcement issue. White supremacists have infiltrated law enforcement agencies around the world, or around the country. I'm sure around the world, but definitely around this country. Los Angeles Sheriff Department had a neo-Nazi gang that had tattoos of, Nazi helmeted skeletons. Murder gangs. Guys, this is what's going on.